Hello and welcome, everyone. Thanks for joining us for today's One EdTech Digital Credentials Roundtable. I'm excited to bring together three great presenters to kind of share how they are using microcredentials at their higher education institutions. My name's Kelly Hoyland. I'm the Higher Education Program Director here with One EdTech. As part of my role here is I really help to support our institutional members in understanding what they can do with microcredentials at their institution. So I'm excited for these three to share their stories. Three different types of institutions with three different programs. So I hopefully you'll get a lot out of it. Just a reminder that we are recording today. So if you could make sure that you stay muted unless you're asking a question, I would appreciate that. So we have a great recording. While we get started, I'm going to launch a quick poll just to see who is in the audience today. So just three quick questions to get a better understanding of who is in attendance today. So if you could take a minute and do that, I would appreciate it. Hopefully it popped up for you. While you're doing that, I will do a quick introduction of who is here today. So as I said, I'm Kelly. Joining me today is Andrew Cedillo from New Mexico State University. And then we have Claire Sullivan from the University of Maine System and Tim Thomas from Mohawk Valley Community College. So I'm excited for the three of them to kind of share what they're doing. We'll hear from the system level perspective. We'll hear from a 4-year institution and then a 2-year. So hopefully you'll be able to relate and understand what's happening in higher ed in digital credentials. With that, we're going to go through and each of these institutions will share their story today. If you have questions, feel free to put them in the chat as we go, but we've also saved time for Q&A at the end of the session today. So thank you. And with that, I will turn it over to Claire.
Thank you, Kelly. I am going to start with the background information about the University of Maine System Microcredential Initiative and the approach we've taken. You can go to the next slide. So we started with the Engaged Black Bear at the University of Maine, which is part of our flagship program. And that was focused on engagement in the community for our matriculated students, so they could get involved in the community or on campus. And we were also started to think even early on about the statewide ecosystem. So then our Board of Trustees put microcredentials into the strategic priorities plan, and many other academic plans were including microcredentials at that time. We received a Lumina All Learning Counts grant, and that focused on underserved populations in Maine, with getting them involved in non-institutional learning and thinking about ways we could onboard them into more academic programs. We also had our statewide workforce goals and reports included microcredentials, our Maine Economic Development Plan, our Maine Economic Recovery Plan, our WIO estate plan, all included microcredentials. And right now we're going through the process of a strategic plan, and microcredentials are included in our draft. So we're working towards unified accreditation with that. We have a proof of concept that we've been working on. We've gone through a pilot phase, and now we're just thinking about how can we grow and scale microcredentials. We really thought long and hard about our guidelines right from the start. What did we want to accomplish? Why were we doing microcredentials? Who was going to benefit from them? So collaboration and alignment were key components of our guidelines for implementing microcredentials. Our microcredentials are competency-based. We didn't want to have participation microcredentials. We focused on workforce development, and we built a framework where quality assurance was built right in through assessments and alignment to standards. We also thought about the definitions. There's a lot of confusion around what microcredentials are and what's the value of them. Do employers value them? So we really were thinking about decreasing that confusion with the development of our framework. So you can go to the next slide. So we built out a framework that all our microcredentials use. So that's that unified perspective, and the collaboration piece is important with this. So all our microcredentials follow 3 levels. We have level 1, which is introductory or foundational knowledge for the information that they would need on that topic area to get them ready to do the more rigorous training in level 2. And level 2 They take that rigorous training. Doesn't matter where the training occurs. It could be on these different campuses. It could be in boot camps. It could be in courses, academic or non-credit courses. And then they move on to level 3, where it always will have an applied learning experience, work-based or experiential learning opportunity, where supervisors are looking at them and determining if they've met the competencies levels against the standards that have been placed in the microcredential. So then all 3 of those lead to the macro badge. So they all get implemented within, and that means that the microcredential has been earned. And so when an employer looks at this particular shape and branded image, they'll know that they've had some rigorous training, and they'll know that the learner has also had some application of that learning in a real world experience. And we think about, all right, what's the next opportunity for this learner? Is it another micro credential? Can they be onboarded into certificate or degree programs? Next slide. So we also wanted to think about flexibility, and we built in what we're calling micro badges. So micro badges can be standalone badges, or they can be pulled into the pathways that are developed. They can include external third-party badges, or they can be built in internally. We've developed a relationship and partnership with Education Design Lab. So we offer their 8 21st century skills badges in courses and programs. So they can take the online modules, or they can map, the professors can map to their courses. And as long as the student reaches the 4 sub-competencies by the end of the course, they would earn the badge. So not everybody in a course would earn that badge. They have to meet the competencies. One example up here is the Dawnland Maine Indian History micro badge. It's a very popular micro badge, standalone one. Right now, we have all our pre-service teachers at the University of Maine required to take this Dawnland course. And we also have our school districts are taking it. So hundreds of teachers around the state are taking that badge. A couple of other examples. We'll go to the next one. That to show you the way the micro badges work. This one was built out computer support specialist by the Maine Department of Education, Adult Education, and they wanted to include industry recognized credentials into the pathway. So they pulled in at level 1, the IC3 digital literacy certification. At level 2, they pulled in the CompTIA A+, and then occasionally they can use test out if that works out for them as an experiential learning to give them some opportunities in that way. So you can see the flexibility is built into the framework. A couple of other examples. This also shows flexibility. We have some micro-credentials for youth. This is one example. We have a 4-H outdoor leadership micro-credential, and it just shows you the collaboration piece, as well as the different ways that you can meet the standards that are set. So once the assessments are in line, you could take a wilderness first aid certification, or you can go to the 4-H camps and you can do their learning programs, or you might take an early college curriculum in order to meet the standards to earn that micro-credential. So it's not just, doesn't matter where you're receiving it, as long as you meet that competency level. One other example to think about for youth development and alignment aspirations is we do have an aquaculture micro-credential that the industry has set the standards, and that has been all set in place. And now we're thinking about, well, how can we develop a youth aquaculture pathway where they can know the next step and earn that adult aquaculture level 1 badge by earning their youth aquaculture pathway. So this is what we're trying to think about, how we might align micro-credentials across the age groups. So one thing that really came quickly to mind is, how do you organize and think about the training program, or how do you get a team to develop a micro-credential using this aligned system? So we developed a training program that you earn a micro-credential as you go along. So you're going to earn your level 1, your level 2, level 3. Level 1 in this case is open to anyone in the state of Maine. It's just to learn about our approach, learn about our framework. It only takes about an hour to complete. At the end of it, you do a reflection and you get 80% or better on your quiz. You earn that level 1 badge. Level 2 is only open to people who are ready to develop a micro-credential. And so they would get enrolled in level 2. And this is where we use a backwards design approach. We get them to think about the skills and competencies right away. We get them to think about how they're going to assess those skills and competencies. They complete worksheets to help them through that process. And then by the end of level 2, we have a metadata template where they're writing out the descriptions, the criteria, and everything that would go into the badges themselves. Our level 3 would bring them on to how do you issue a badge? How do you implement it? What's your communication plan to work with each other? And we also have a template where they would put the information that's needed for the learner on their own individual campus websites. And then they would earn that macro badge. So just to end things here, you may have questions. We'll hold those to the end. But some things we're thinking about working on right now is this idea of cluster courses. Some people call them bundling up classes. So courses that have already in place or can be developed around a particular theme. You put 2 or 3, 4 courses together, and those would count towards certificate and degree programs. So we're right in the process of trying to get that organized and to get people excited about cluster course idea. We're also thinking about better ways to add academic credits to the non-credit opportunities that are available through our credit for prior learning. We're thinking about more ways to add third-party certifications and industry recognized credentials. We have partnered with Grow with Google, so we're starting down that path. And like I mentioned with Education Design Lab, thinking about ways to pull in employers and industries. When we develop a team for micro-credentials, we want them to be developed across the campuses, so not just one campus. So they're thinking about how do we pull in employers as advisors, how we can include maybe student perspectives a little bit further to create this collaborative team. Because like we don't want 7 different micro-credentials. We want 1 micro-credential across the 7 campuses. Registration site we're working on, so people have an easy way to register for micro-credentials. But constantly thinking about marketing communication. That's an ongoing process of how do you communicate the value of micro-credentials to the learners as well as to employers and other stakeholders. Right now, we are conducting a survey for all the learners who have earned any of our badges, and we're asking them, what do you think are the benefits of earning that particular micro-credential, breaking it out by micro-credential and then combining it. Last year, we focused more on the developers, what they thought the benefits were for their programs as well as the state and their own universities. And we're always thinking about how to put this into some kind of comprehensive learner record, digital wallet perspective. So those are just some of the things we're thinking about and working on. So it's been certainly a process.
Thanks for sharing that. Just one quick question I would say is somebody to ask with your taxonomy, do you have that laid out like on a website? So if employers are trying to understand what the difference between a level 1 and a level 3 is that how do they know what the difference is?
Yeah, it's on our website, and it's so if you go to the next slide, I think it's right there.
Perfect.
Yeah.
What a good segue. Thank you.
You're welcome.
I really appreciate the different variety of badges you offer, the fact that you have youth ones with 4-H as well as, your current students and potential community members. So thank you for sharing. There are some other questions in the chat, and we'll save those for the end, or feel free to add some comments to the chat while the others are presenting too. Thank you, Claire. From here, we'll pass it to Tim to share his work.
Yeah, so Claire, I really appreciated your the context you provide from a system level, the cohesiveness you're attempting and will likely create throughout the state of Maine. What you're going to hear over the next 15 minutes is the exact opposite of that. We are a community college in warm and sunny Utica, Rome, New York. To provide a little context, the county that we serve has a total population of about 230,000 people, and we have 6,000 full-time equivalent students. We are part of the SUNY system, which is made up of 64 campuses. We're one of those 64 campuses. And Mohawk Valley Community College started in 1946 as Mohawk Valley Technical Institute. So we've always had workforce development as part of our core mission. Kelly, if you want to go to the next slide. So where did our conversation about microcredentialing begin? And it actually began before this timeline that you're seeing indicates. In fall 2015, we had two wonderful adult students who were part of our student government begin to explore, as part of student government, microcredentialing and digital badging. Those two individuals, in collaboration with one faculty member, developed a white paper. In spring of 2016, the group of three shared the white paper with our college senate. The college senate then decided the college senate gave this work to a group of faculty caucus to explore what microcredentialing could look like at Mohawk Valley Community College. It progressed through our shared governance processes until spring of 2018, when our board of trustees approved a microcredentialing policy for Mohawk Valley Community College. This policy was the first policy in the SUNY system, and it later went on to inform the SUNY system's policy for microcredentialing. In fall of 2018, we were funded a NSF ATE grant to build out our first subset of microcredentials. And Kelly, if you want to go to the next slide. So at Mohawk Valley Community College, our microcredentials can be either credit coursework, non-credit coursework, or a combination of the two. But what all of our microcredentials have in common is that they lead to the attainment of a meta competency that can directly lead to either career or advancement within a career field. Our first three microcredentials were in our drone program, remotely piloted aircraft systems, or uncrewed aerial systems. We took our degree program, which was in existence. We reimagined the degree program and the course offerings to fit into three different buckets. Each of those buckets comprised a microcredential. So after our curricular work, we had one, and we currently still do have, one microcredential that consists of three different courses and 9 credits that leads to work in aircraft system maintenance. So this would be maintaining small unmanned aerial systems platforms. The second microcredential, which is 3 more courses, can lead to jobs as drone pilots. The third microcredential can lead to jobs in data analysis, so it's more of a GIS focus. The combination of those 3 microcredentials, along with some related general education coursework, can lead to an associate's degree that then can transfer into bachelor's programs. So we have a number of students who decide to come and take all 3 microcredentials and are actually degree-seeking students, but we also work with incumbent worker training in this program to get, with this program is primarily engineers. So to get the engineers just that quick skill where they can be their engineering firm's drone expert. Go to the next slide. So that was our early work, and we took that early learning in 2018 and we started building out more pathways, and our terminology expanded as well. So we're talking about microcredentials, but also incremental credentials, and I think you're going to see that play out in the next couple of slides. So our next work was in our metal fabrication program, where we've had a long-standing program, a welding associate's degree. We also had a SUNY recognized CNC machinist certificate program. But locally in the Utica-Rome area, there are very few welding jobs and there are very few machining jobs but there's a whole bunch of metal fabrication jobs which really require a student to have a strong understanding of both welding and machining. So we took our existing welding associate's degree program and we discontinued it, got rid of it. We took our welding certificate program, which is an 8-month certificate program. We reimagined that into 3 micro-credentials. One of those micro-credentials leads to job in fabrication, another in ornamental welding, and third in structural welding. Each of those micro-credentials have some overlapping coursework. The sum total of those 3 micro-credentials is the SUNY recognized certificate program. Combining that SUNY recognized certificate program in welding with the SUNY recognized CNC certificate program can lead to a metal fabrication associate's degree. So because of this realignment, we have a number of on-ramps and off-ramps, and it took what historically was a linear training pathway, and it's made it very non-linear, which is doing quite a bit to develop the workforce, our regional workforce in metal fabrication. Next slide, please. So taking that learning, and with the new entrants in microelectronics employers in the area, we developed a 13-module onboarding training for one of our semiconductor companies locally. That is a non-credit training program that's comprised of 100 hours, and it's offered over the course of 13 half-day sessions. We then worked with that same employer to develop 3 different micro-credentials, each of which are aligned with the internal career ladder, technician career ladder at that employer. Those micro-credentials are outlined in red. So because of this work, any employee, any technician who works for this semiconductor employee, they will go through the same baseline technical training, which can convert into credit if the employee decides to continue into a degree program with us. We work with the employer to maximize their employer tuition reimbursement program to allow their technicians to take our micro-credentials, which lead to immediate pay raises and do quite a bit with this employer to build out their workforce, and which is especially important given the workforce crisis that we're facing right now. Next slide, please. So this slide highlights some work that we're doing with another microelectronics employer, and it overlays micro-credentialing with New York State Department of Labor registered apprenticeship programs. So not only are we stacking college credentials in this example, but we're also stacking New York State Department of Labor credentials in this example. So the employer in this case puts all of their technicians into an industrial manufacturing technician apprenticeship program. We push on location to provide college coursework in 3 different electrical courses for their apprentices. At the completion of 16-month apprenticeship program and the 3 college classes, the apprentices receive a New York State Department of Labor journey worker credential, and they have advanced standing in a couple of our micro-credentials. After completing that first trade, the employer puts their technicians into a secondary level trade, the electromechanical technician, which is a 4-year trade. We continue to push on location, offering 23 additional credits. The sum total of the 23 credits of the secondary level trade and the 9 credits of the primary trade leads to attainment of our SUNY recognized mechatronics certificate program and a second journey worker credential from the New York State Department of Labor. After completing those 2 apprenticeship programs, 3 different micro-credentials and a SUNY recognized mechatronics certificate, the employer continues sending their technicians to us to take the 32 credits remaining for the electrical service technician associate's degree. So you can see how, as we're going through these examples, the conversation quickly turned from one that was solely focused on micro-credentials to now looking at the entire pathway, where micro-credentials is now a piece of building out the training pathway for extended career ladders. And next slide, please. So here's the most complicated graphic organizer you're probably going to see this week. But I think it's an important one because it highlights how this thinking can be applied to training pathways that are highly regulated, especially in New York State. And it also highlights how this type of thinking and the importance of micro-credentials and incremental credentials and pathways can apply to fields that go beyond just manufacturing. So as we're facing a teacher workforce crisis in New York State, as I'm sure all of you are as well, we worked with our school districts to identify what is that hinge profession in the education world, in the public education world. And through their input, we've identified that the teacher assistant profession is that hinge profession. In New York State, if you want to become a teacher, you need to do 6 years of schooling. You need a master's degree. And it's historically been very inflexible. And because it's been inflexible, and because classes traditionally are offered during the days, a huge subset of the population does not have access to the training that's required in order to become a teacher. But if we focus on the teacher assistant program, we can quickly, and we're offering a 24-hour class, which comprises a microcredential. We can quickly get somebody certified for work as a teacher assistant in our public school system. After that 24-hour experience, we developed two more microcredentials that can take somebody from a level 1 to a level 2 to a level 3 teacher assistant certification, which leads to immediate advances in pay. All of the coursework in those microcredentials provide advanced standing to our associate's degrees in either childhood education or adolescent education. The school districts, written into their collective bargaining agreements, will pay SUNY tuition for any teacher's assistants to complete degrees within the SUNY system. So we just offer our courses at a time where these teacher's assistants can continue taking coursework to lead to the completion of the associate's degree, while earning an income as a teacher assistant and while receiving benefits due to their teacher assistant position. We then form partnerships with some of our four-year partners to develop local pathways to complete the appropriate bachelor's degrees with articulation agreements to a number of different master's degrees. So because of this new pathway that we developed that is heavily reliant on micro-credentials, we've taken a profession that has historically been only accessible by a very small subset of the population, and now anybody can access it because we have a way to quickly get somebody into the teacher assistant position to allow them to earn a wage and so they can feed their kids, as well as obtaining benefits through their extended training pathway. And next slide, please. So as you can see, we are, as I hope you can see, we're trying to quickly expand our offerings. All of our offering expansion is done in partnership with employers. Regarding marketing of this, I don't think our employers actually, I don't think they understand what a micro-credential is, but since they're sitting at the table in the development of the programming, they understand what the outcomes are. We always, over the past couple of years, we've worked with the employers to do incumbent worker training initially. After the employers validate the training due to the incumbent worker training, then we open up the programming to the general population to lead to new employees for the same employer partners that helped develop the program.
Thank you for sharing.
That,
yeah, that was really good. There's lots of questions that we'll get to, I think, at the end about how you were able to modularize a lot of that information and get it both from the non-credit into the credit and having all of those pathways. So we'll hit on that a little bit more at the end, but first we'll pass it to Andrew to share what's happening at New Mexico State.
All right, thank you so much. And thank you so much to the first presenters. Those presentations were awesome. So NMSU microlearning, it's fairly new. I like to say that we're barely in our crawl stages at this point. And we launched this about maybe about 2 years ago. And so if you want to go to the next slide, I'll go and chat about what we're going to be talking about. So we launched this about 2 years ago. And what I'm going to share in my presentation is a little bit about what it is, what type of micro-credentials we have that's offered, talk a little bit about the learning experiences, badging, and then also how we're fortunate enough to actually have a team to support this. If you want to go to the next slide. All right, so NMSU microlearning, it came as an idea about maybe, like I said, about 2 years ago. And so what we do is all our courses focus on one skill, one competency learning model. We work with internal faculty and we also work with external partners as well to offer these micro learning opportunities and these micro credentials. And so far, it's been a really good experience. If you want to go to the next slide. So these micro learning opportunities and the experiences that we offer is we're working with faculty and, like I mentioned, external partners to help them build skills in a specified area. One of the ways that this came about is so when the pandemic hit, a lot of our faculty, they had offered similar, I guess, I wouldn't say it's micro-credential, but live training in person. And of course, when the pandemic hit, they had to think real clever of how they're going to offer that training. So a lot of them jumped into Zoom. And what we were able to do is assign some instructional designers to help them actually build these trainings within Canvas. And so that's when they would offer them through Canvas. Well, this, a light bulb click, and we realized that, hey, it would be great to have some type of micro-credentialing program that's available to people outside the university as well. That's always been a hurdle. We've always had internal Canvas where, you had to be a New Mexico State University student to take these courses. So that's where NMSU microlearning came to be. So now we have Canvas storefront, which is the second iteration, and this allows for users outside the university to actually enroll in these courses. So a lot of these partners that we're working with internally, they do provide trainings to people who are in New Mexico or outside the university, specific businesses. So now they're actually able to then enroll in these courses. So that's how it kind of came to being. We started working with these instructors to then offer these micro credentials, but then it started getting bigger and bigger. So then faculty, we started working with faculty, they saw that, hey, there is sometimes gaps when students are leaving our programs and they're going into the workforce. Some partners that we have are asking for students to have certain skill sets and things that are maybe not being addressed in a program or maybe partially being addressed in the program. So what we were able to do now is work with faculty who actually have partners who hire our students to determine what are the most needed skills right now. And so one example is we began working with our engineering faculty who offer a total of 5 different micro credentials that are offered to students. They can take these as part of their degree program. And they did work with our registrar to actually make these micro credentials count towards academic credit. But not only that is these micro-credentials are not only offered to, of course, our internal students, but they're also offered to these partners and whoever else wants to take them, which is really great because we're developing those relationships. And I've seen a lot of comments saying, like, how do you get recruiters to say, hey, this is a micro-credential that is legit and valid, and we want potential students or who are going to be our candidates to apply and have this credential. Well, we start working with these partners who know that this is available, and they're actually working and putting their workforce through these same courses that have a mixture of our NMSU students and actually their workforce. And then they're getting that micro credential. And like we've all mentioned, the whole idea is those internally are using it to upskill and hopefully get advanced positions. Our students are also taking it. So when they graduate college, not only do they have now a bachelor's degree, but they also have these micro credentials in that, are shown in the form of a digital badge that really showcases their story and shows what type of skill sets they now have that makes them qualified for that position over maybe a competitor who also is applying for that position as well. So that's how it works with internal staff. And then external as well. They come to us, and right here we have this storefront, and that's where we're actually able to showcase everything that we have available to people. So internally, again, it's kind of identified, what these students need when they graduate, but the way that we're also working with external groups, now that they've kind of identified like, hey, NMSU has this program that's supporting our workforce. There's a lot of grants that are available that, again, our internal faculty are applying for, but also our external partners also have, that relates to professional development in the state of New Mexico. So they are working with our team to then develop these micro-credentials as well. For example, we're working with a company called Electronic Caregiver, who now offers their Care Coach certification through NMSU Microlearning. So people who are interested in working for Electronic Caregiver can now go and take a certification through NMSU Microlearning, will get awarded a badge. And again, it makes them more of an ideal candidate for that job that they're applying for within that group. And we're able to utilize this storefront to then stage that course. We can also make them their unique storefronts as well. So if we wanted to put Electronic Caregiver powered by NMSU Microlearning, we can do that and actually work with them. And the great thing about this, which I'll get to more specific, is that we're able to ensure quality because we do have instructional designers who are working with internal and these outside groups as well. Another example is we started working with NMDA, which basically certifies pesticide applicators. Every year they have to take an applicator training, and now they offer it entirely through NMSU Microlearning. So now the pesticide applicators throughout the state of New Mexico will take this micro-credential, and they'll get awarded annually, and that basically ensures that they're keeping their certifications. If you want to go to the next slide. And so we use a badging system. I'm sure a lot of you may be familiar with, but it used to be called Badger, but now it's called Canvas Badges. So Canvas now owns Badger. So we do have a badging system that we used so that, students can really tell their story of how they've went and earned and show proof of these specific skills. So if you want to go to the next slide. We've made sure that these badges do have certain value. So each one of our badges do contain, of course, the title. There's also earning criteria. There's also a description of the badge as well. For certain groups, like the pesticide applicator group, the badges actually contain a license number as well. So they'll actually have a license number. So as they complete it, it shows that proof to the NMDA side of the house. And we wanted to make our badges look unique. So we do have them in the shape of New Mexico. If you want to go to the next slide. And this is how we're able to showcase exactly how students are earning these badges over time. We use, again, Canvas badges, and we use what's called a pathway. So what happens is there's certain criteria that a student would need to complete in order to earn a badge. So some have one and done micro-credentials, which is perfectly fine. Other ones, we do have stackable credentials where students have to go through an intro, and then they get into the more advanced levels and eventually earn a badge over time. In this case, with the pesticide applicator, there's a total of 12 micro-credentials built into the course itself. And so what students are able to do is they select the 4 that they want to complete, and at the end, they're able to earn the badge. But what this does really well is, of course, students will get access to this. So they'll see everything grayed out. They know exactly what they need to complete in order to earn the overall badge. So as they complete it, of course, they start becoming colored, and it shows that they've completed it. And they're able to also show this with their employers as well. And again, that goes into their digital backpack. So also, as we work with outside groups, they like to do a lot of stackable credentials as well. So as they're developing and designing these credentials with us, they're really thinking about, okay, each one of these badges are going to represent a micro credential that overall feeds into the larger picture of things. And that's going to ensure that they are certified. That's how we work with outside groups. Internally, it's the same, almost the same thing. The only difference is it's more so built within like a potential degree program. So as they're going through their program, that these are built in, they can potentially take these, and they would again be awarded at certain times during their degree program. So once they exit, they'll have, again, proof of these specific skill sets that they're able to show. If you want to go to the next slide. So this is just kind of a holder slide, but you can go to the next one. And I call it Teamwork Makes the Dream Work. So we're real fortunate. So we do have an instructional design team that works with this, with anyone who wants to offer a micro learning experience. They're all certified in Quality Matters. They've all undergone a lot of instructional design training as well. And they're all well-versed in a bunch of different tools, such as Design Plus, authoring tools, which includes Articulate Storyline. The big idea is that we do want to offer like a really unique experience to students. So again, they work with our faculty or external group. They are our subject matter experts. So what happens is, as the collaboration goes on, we're really thinking about the audience, the learning experiences, and then also future planning for the courses as well. So with us having kind of, that ID and SME relationship as we build these things, it's really nice because we have a lot of data. We have a lot of things that we can refer back to. So as we start creating these programs, we can go back to them. We can talk with the IDs. We can talk with the subject matter experts as we kind of think about what we're going to create in the future to move forward. If you want to go to the next slide now. And then we also have, of course, our course design. And so not only, and I want to go back to like the other larger part of our team as well, is before I get into the course design in depth, we do have also marketing services who will work with our external and internal partners as well. And the idea behind marketing is they're going to get the word out that this microcredential is available to the public. They also create relationships, working relationships with outside groups, so that way they can partner and say, hey, we have these microcredentials. Would your employees be interested in taking them? We can work with other outside groups who do have one that's maybe available to the public, such as a care coach certification, which is all about telehealth. Our marketing team is working with them with getting the word out, putting an open house to let people know that this is ready to go. They also meet with students to create testimonials for courses as they go through it. We also have a project manager who's involved with all projects in NMSU microlearning. So they're able to see projects from beginning to end, make sure that things are launched at a specific timeline. And then, of course, my end is I'm the instructional design lead. And so what I kind of oversee is everything that's going on. I do have, of course, my hands in some of the course design as well. But ultimately, what I'm doing is kind of just leading the team, reviewing courses at the end of once they're done, re-reviewing courses when they're ready to relaunch, and then also kind of creating more of an ecosystem of what it's going to look like in the future. A course design is we do provide, as we work with faculty, one of the things I think that's been really helpful to get people to buy in is it's so much not where, hey, we want you to offer micro-credentials for NMSU microlearning, or we want to make sure that, hey, you have this support. You're going to have people who are going to help you design this course to ensure that it's a clear navigation. We want to make sure that, the content is chunked in a way that it's not overwhelming to students and it really meets what we consider would be an ideal micro-credential. So we do have that support that goes forward for every course. And then we also have like course reviews internally that, once it's ready to launch, we do review, check for accessibility, et cetera, to just make sure, hey, this is ready to go. And then also we continue to talk with faculty about what's the next phase of this. Do they have any partners they want us to talk with to, potentially put their workforce through this program? We also open up to faculty, letting them know if there's any grants that are available that meet maybe professional development that you want to, launch and offer. We're open for you, including us in those grants, and we'll help make sure that we're able to help you design these courses. And I think, that's kind of like our little model with working with faculty. So if you want to get to the final slide. So thank you so much. If you're interested, I'll put my email in the chat so you can contact me if you have any more questions. And thank you for your time.
Great, thanks everyone. I will stop sharing my screen so we can move to kind of discussion and questions now. Lots of feedback, lots of conversation happening. I would say one of the early questions was kind of from the system level perspective and how do you kind of have alignment across that? And Claire talked to it a little bit, and even Tim from the SUNY perspective. I would just, while you're thinking about a response and I pose a better question to you, I would mention that sometimes the governor's level, so the National Governors Association, the NGA, there's a lot of conversation about using microcredentials to meet workforce needs. So if your system isn't talking about it, your governor's office might be. So make sure you're kind of having your eyes and ears open on both levels. But do you have any tips for those who are trying to look at it at more of a system level, or if you're at an institution, how you talk with your system about it? To any of you?
I would say really understanding why you're doing it and what goals you want and who you want for what purposes. So is it for increased revenue? Is it for getting your learners or matriculated students out better skills so they can be employed in that first job at a higher pay? So really taking the time to think about what the benefits are for your particular institution, and then how can you level that up to the system level.
Yeah, and to add just a couple of words there, I think we found that when we started this before there was any system policy. So it reminds me that as individual campuses, we're able to work independently sometimes. And I guess I'll leave with that. I guess don't be afraid. If you're part of a bigger system, don't be afraid to just do something, because you can inform what the system's direction is going to be.
Yeah, and I think too, even talking and hearing about people's needs, like sometimes we'll meet with entire groups just to share exactly what this is, because you'll find that a lot of people don't really understand what a micro-credential is. And it's not a bad thing, you know, it's new to some people, and but when you kind of word it and like, hey, this is some skill-based training that you could potentially offer, I found that they get really excited because they've already collected surveys from past students, you know, they talk to alumni, so they kind of have a general understanding of what they need to include in their programs. Only difference is that sometimes that could take like 2-3 years to add a course, right? So what they're able to do now is through that form of that micro-credential, it gets them a little bit more excited, and they can kind of see the light at the end of the tunnel a little bit quicker, because they're like, hey, I can add this, and as students go through my program, they're going to earn these micro-credentials. So here they go, they get their bachelor's degree and they have these skills now to these employers. Let's go. And so that's what I've kind of found working with some groups. And again, we're early on where we've worked with about maybe 3 departments to finally start doing this, where it kind of transfers over. And, you know, we're just continuing to grow.
Perfect.
And 2 or 4 years is a long time, right? It's a long time to get a credential. And only some people have the ability to set that amount of time aside in order to get the credential. So micro-credentials are that easy entry point, because they're shorter in length, that can ultimately lead to that 2 or 4 year credential.
Yeah, and I think the idea too that employers need that skill now. They don't need it in 2 or 4 years if you have a program already existing for a student to complete. And then you think about the process it would take to get a new program in place at an institution. It will take a little bit of time. So we had a panel of employers at one of our recent events who said, higher ed just moves too slow. So we need to be able to respond quickly. So I think that's a great point, that these micro-credentials, not only for learners to have that short and ability, but also for the employers to have their skills met. On that conversation about employers, lots of conversation about how did you get started? How do you make sure employers understand what these are? What tips do you have from your experience working with employers?
So we developed all of our credentials in partnership with employers. It was a co-development process. To Kelly's point, the employers need the people now, and that's why they were willing to engage with us. Once we recognized that that we had validated curriculum, we churned it up into a micro-credential, which allowed us to recruit more broadly.
Yeah, and to echo that too, I mean, I would say aside from maybe 3 courses, all of our courses have been done in partnership with employers. We also have like a hidden listing too, where they even are able to design things just for their own workforce that they can then just offer, internally, that isn't available to the public, but could be available to our students if we choose to. But yeah, that's been like the biggest thing, is because they know what they need. And so we're able to, again, have our team work with them, identify those gaps and address it through training or online learning. And it's been a success so far. So like ECG, electronic caregiver, they've been able to interview people and then find more qualified candidates because of their certification that they offer, and people go through it.
Great. I would just say, if you have a question you want to ask verbally, please just raise your hand and we'll work you into the conversation. Another question that came up was the non-credit to credit, and working that through the system and working with the registrars, and how did you even start that conversation with the registrar, and what tips do you have for those who want to make that happen for their learners?
We're still working on that. We do have a setup, for one of the things that I'm very hopeful about is external review of training versus individual review of credits for prior learning as they go. So if we can get, all right, this is the microcredential, take a look at the microcredential and then see what the credits are. But there is a lot of resistance and people not being able to determine how many credits to bring in from the outside. So there is a lot of talk going on right now. So it would be wonderful to move it along at a quicker pace, but it's one of those, I think there's some fear involved in how many credits to offer and how.
Yeah, it's a little messy for sure. I think this is where we're lucky again, because we're an individual campus. Relatively small, which I think has some benefits, and one of those is we're able to be a little more nimble sometimes. But we've been providing prior learning assessment for a number of different programs for quite a few years. I think one example is our police academy. We've developed a system that equates the police academy, the pre-police training, to 32 college credits, half of an associate's degree. So since that system has been in place, we were able to piggyback on that with some other examples that I highlighted in our micro-credentialing work. Still not to scale though. We don't have the ability to do this in every program. It's much easier for us when an individual course results in an industry recognized credential, and for us to bring in the industry recognized credential as the college credits. When that marriage doesn't occur, it's difficult.
Yeah, and with our situation, I guess what we were able to do is, and it's definitely a hurdle, like everyone else has said. So like when we worked with our engineering group, one of the things that we made as a requirement is that the courses can't go longer than 42.5 hours. And so the idea is that if you're going to offer one that's for credit, each micro-credential has to be 42.5 hours. The way that they're able to work with our registrar office is that they identified an elective credit, for example, that students can enroll in this elective credit. So students will enroll in this elective credit, but they have to complete, it's like about 3 courses, 3 of the micro-credentials that they have offered in order for them to receive that elective credit. And then we had to do something a little bit fancy with it, because we also want these micro-credentials to be open to employers as well. So we have it on our storefront, and we have the student version of Canvas. So what we're able to do is generate a coupon code. So those students who enroll into those elective credits can then bypass the payment through using that coupon code, and then employers who want to put their company through that course can then just pay whatever it is or issue a check, and we can then put them in through that course. And then we have that instructor who is, by record for that elective, grading the student work and then reporting back to the grades. So it is a process that we're still working on fine tuning, but that's how we were able to make it work on our end.
Great, thank you. Anyone else? All right. Thank you so much for your help. There was a comment too that if you were wondering kind of the registrar conversation, Noah pointed out that he also helped work on that, but Tracy, who's in the audience as well. I did just put a link ACRO, the registrar's organization, did publish a report last year about working with alternative credentials. So that's a great resource if you want to understand from the registrar's perspective their view of microcredentials. So that's a great one. All right. Anything else today? All right. If not, thank you very much for sharing your stories. I appreciate you taking the time to do this. We will send out the recording and the slides to everybody who has registered later this week. So if you're looking for some of those resources, thank you. They'll come to you in your email. Thank you very much. We will have another roundtable in May, and a link to that will be included in the follow-up message. We will be focusing on comprehensive learner records and LER examples. So if you want to learn more about that, that will be our May conversation. So thank you, everybody, and have a wonderful day.
Thank you. Bye-bye.